Hello and welcome to Millie White Cooks. In today's step-by-step video, I'm going to show you that you can have your Christmas cake and eat it, even on a low-fat, heart-healthy diet. This rich, moist fruit cake is so crammed full of deliciousness that you'll never guess that it has almost 2/3 less saturated fat than a traditional Christmas cake. I'm also going to show you a clever way to bake this cake that will make it much easier to cut into even portion sizes, which is one of my key tips to achieving a healthy balance when it comes to eating more indulgently during the holiday season. This recipe is from my new low-fat Christmas and Holiday Entertaining Recipe Cookbook, and you can find the links to this in the detail box below. We'll start by taking a look at the ingredients list. It is quite long, but don't be put off by this, as making the cake itself is super easy and it is worth it for all the lovely flavours. The first stage is to macerate all the dried fruits and nuts overnight, and for this you'll need 20 glacé or candied cherries. However, if you find these hard to find in your local store, then it's fine to use dried cherries instead. Plus 50 grams or 3 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of chopped candied mixed peel. Here I have 45 grams or 1/3 of a cup of pitted dried dates, and I'll be using the same quantity again in the actual cake batter, but more on that later. Plus 100 grams or 3/4 of a cup of ready-to-eat dried apricots. This is 225 grams or 2 cups of currants, and another 225 grams or 1½ cups of raisin. You'll need 50 grams or ½ a cup of whole almonds with their skins. An orange and lemon, preferably unwaxed and organic, as we'll be using the zest as well as the juice from these, plus either one good-sized firm eating apple, such as Fuji or Braeburn, or 2 smaller ones, such as these small coxes. We're going to macerate all these fruits overnight in lovely flavours, starting with 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 75 ml or 1/4 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon of brandy or any liqueur of your choice. However, if you don't want to use alcohol, just switch this to plain apple or orange juice. In this dish I have all the fragrant spices that epitomise Christmas, including 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, which I'll freshly grate from this whole nut. I'm using a very small quantity of reduced sodium salt, just 1/2 teaspoon, plus 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon, and 2 teaspoons of fragrant mixed spice. Also, I want to share a tip here. In my videos, I always weigh out all of my ingredients in advance so that I can show them to you, but normally I wouldn't expect you to do the same. However, for a recipe like this, where there are lots of different ingredients, getting them all ready in advance can be useful in making sure that nothing gets missed. I'm going to show you in a minute what the first step is with all those fruits, nuts and booze, but at this point let's continue with the rest of the ingredients list. So you will also need 85 grams or 2/3 of a cup of wholemeal or whole wheat flour and 70 grams or ½ a cup of plain or all-purpose flour. In this little dish I have 15 grams or 2 tablespoons of cornflour, known as cornstarch in America, along with 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Instead of butter, my fruitcake recipe uses 170 grams or 3/4 of a cup of sunflower spread. Ground almonds are one of the ingredients that helps keep this fruitcake beautifully moist, and I'm using 50 grams or ½ a cup. And another ingredient that achieves this is glycerine, known as culinary glycerol in the US, which you should be able to find easily in the home baking section at the grocery store, and we'll use 1 teaspoon. Here's 3 lovely free-range eggs, which are size large in the UK or extra large in the US. For sweetness, I'm going to use a few different ingredients, but we'll start with traditional light soft brown sugar, of which we'll need 110 grams or ½ a cup, packed. British viewers will recognise this tin. It's black treacle, but you could use molasses instead, and in either case we need 1 tablespoon. As well as using the fruit in the cake, I'm also using fruit to help sweeten the cake, starting with the second portion of 45 grams or 1/3 of a cup of dried dates, which I've chopped, and these have been soaking in 2 tablespoons of boiling water. And finally, this is 60 grams or 1/4 a cup of unsweetened applesauce. I make my own, and there's a recipe in my cookbook, but you can actually find pure unsweetened apple puree in the baby food aisle, and that's fine to use instead. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for lots more healthy eating recipes. Now let's get cooking. The night before making the cake, prepare and soak the dried fruits and nuts. Wash the orange and lemon thoroughly. In the meantime, chop the first portion of dates into pieces of a similar size to your currants and raisins, making sure you've removed the stones if they are not pitted. Do the same with the apricots. Pop these all into a large bowl or jug. Then chop up the glacé cherries before adding these to the jug along with the chopped mixed peel. Finally, roughly chop the whole almonds too. Transfer to the jug, and the chopping is now all done. Next, use a fine grater to zest in the lemon and orange. Then grate in the nutmeg and add the mixed spice, ground cinnamon, ginger and salt. Squeeze out the juice from the lemon and the orange. Now add the raisins and currants to the jug and pour over the freshly squeezed citrus juice and the brandy. Give everything a lovely good stir. Then remember, you've forgotten to add the vanilla extract. Oops, let's quickly fix that. Mix again, then cover the bowl with a clean dry cloth and leave to soak overnight. It's beginning to smell a lot like Christmas. So it's now the following morning, and I'm going to start by showing you a clever way to cook this cake that's both very festive and an excellent way to help cut the cake into even-sized portions. That is, I'm going to cook this cake in a wreath shape, and I'll show you how to do this. Start by lining the sides and bottoms of a 23cm or 9-inch round deep cake tin with a layer of baking parchment. Now, to make the hole in the centre of the wreath, I've taken a standard 400g or 14-ounce food can from which I've removed the label and washed it thoroughly. I've wrapped it in parchment too with a little frill at the bottom. Add enough baking beads or beans to fill it, then place it in the centre of the round cake tin. Cover the frills with a collar of parchment to help keep them flat. You're also going to need some brown paper or newspaper and string. However, if you don't want to follow my idea for a wreath cake, you just need to bake this cake in either a deep-sided 18cm or 7-inch square cake tin or a 20cm or 8-inch round cake tin. Finally, cut a circle of parchment that fits snugly just inside your cake pan and cut out a hole large enough to go over the inner tin and set this aside. If you're not sure how to line a cake tin, look out for my cooking tips and tricks video on preparing a cake pan. If making the wreath style cake, preheat the oven to 140 degrees Celsius fan, 325 degrees Fahrenheit or gas mark 3. Otherwise, set the oven to 160 degrees Celsius fan, 350 degrees Fahrenheit and gas mark 4 if making a standard round or square cake. Make sure that the lowest shelf in the oven has enough headroom above it to accommodate your wrapped cake tin once it's been wrapped in the outer collar of brown paper or newspaper. Now let's finish making our cake. When I was showing you the cake ingredients, I explained that I'd roughly chop the second portion of pitted dates and soak them in 2 tablespoons of boiling water for 10 minutes. So pop these into the bowl of a mini food processor along with the apple, which I've cored and also roughly chopped. Pulse until they are pureed, then add them to the jug with the macerated dried fruits and nuts and stir again and set aside. In my stand mixer, I've started to beat together the sunflower spread and sifted brown sugar, and it will take a few minutes until it's light and creamy like this. Next, add the black treacle and the glycerine and beat again. I've lightly whisked the eggs together and start to add these to the bowl a third at a time, beating well to combine and scraping down the sides of the bowl with a spatula. I've also mixed together the flours, cornflour, baking powder and ground almonds. Turn the mixer to low and slowly start to add this flour mixture, again scraping down the sides of the bowl as necessary. Add the applesauce, then pour in the lovely soaked fruits and nuts, making sure you scrape in all the juices and flavoursome scraps from the jug. Turn the mixer to low and beat to combine, making sure there are no pockets of unmixed fruit or cake. Carefully spoon the cake mix into the prepared outer ring of the cake pan, making sure that the inner tin remains centred. Use the back of a spoon to level around the top. Alternatively, tip into your choice of square or round cake tin, smooth to level the top, but then make a slight dip in the centre. Next, carefully ease the piece of parchment with the hole over the top of the cake, as this helps prevent the top of the cake from becoming too crisp or brown when cooking. Then wrap a collar of brown paper or newspaper around the outside of the tin and tie securely with string. Place the cake on the bottom shelf in the oven. If you're baking a wreath style cake, like me, then bake for 1.5 hours, then lower the temperature to 120 Celsius fan, 275 degrees Fahrenheit or gas mark 1, and bake for a further 45 minutes to an hour. For a regular round or square tin, bake for 30 minutes at the initial temperature, then lower the temperature to 130 degrees Celsius fan, 300 Fahrenheit or gas mark 2, and bake for a further 2 to 2.25 hours. After this, test the cake for doneness by inserting a skewer into the middle to see if it comes out clean, like this. If not, return the cake to the oven and check again after 10 minutes, then repeat until the cake is cooked. Remove from the oven, but allow the cake to cool completely in the tin. My cake is now fully cooled, so I'm just going to show you what to do with it if you cooked it in the wreath style. So these baking beans are now completely cold, and I'm going to take out enough of them so that I can loosen the parchment paper that's folded around the top of the food can. And then peel this back. Then I'm very gently easing out the bean-filled central can, which I'm going to wash and keep for later for when I decorate this cake. Next, gently turn the cake over onto a board and remove from the cake pan. And carefully peel off the lining paper from around the sides and off the bottom. You can now release the baking parchment around the central hole. If you want to, you can now feed the cake by piercing the top of the cake with a cocktail stick or skewer and spooning over 1 tablespoon of liqueur. However, I'm not going to do this as I'm serving my cake to the whole family, including younger children. Now simply wrap the cake in a large sheet of baking parchment and then wrap it again in kitchen foil. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have. You can also find this recipe in my new low-fat Christmas and Holiday Entertaining Cookbook, which is available as a paperback or Kindle book from Amazon or as an e-book from iBooks, Nook or Kobo. All the links to my book are in the description box below. I hope you'll want to watch more videos in my low-fat cooking series, like these ones here, and look out for my video on how to decorate this cake. Thank you so much for your company. Please also let me know if you make this or if you'd like to see a video of any other of my recipes, and bye for now.